Black Millionaire shocked, seeing twin black belts intimidated by street kid. Marcus Wellington walked the streets of Harlem like he owned them. His crisp, tailored navy suit gleamed under the pale autumn sun, the fabric hugging his broad shoulders with a precision that only money and style could buy. The scent of roasted chestnuts mingled with the distant rumble of subway trains and the chatter of morning vendors. But Marcus's sharp eyes weren't on the bright crowds or the colors of the neighborhood. They were fixed on the charity gala later that night, the one event that could push his name higher on the list of New York's most generous philanthropists. But then something stopped him dead. There, in front of a crumbling brick coffee shop, a very different scene unfolded. Two men stood side by side, almost like shadows mirrored. Both wore black belts in martial arts, their bodies stiff with trained power. Their calm, confident aura was something Marcus had seen before. Discipline. Yet their faces told a different story. Their eyes, usually sharp and cold, flickered with a hint of unease, almost fear. Eyes darting, breaths shallow. And then Marcus saw the source of their discomfort. The kid. He was small for his age, scrappy, wearing a threadbare hoodie and jeans peppered with dirt stains. But there was fire in his eyes, raw, blazing fire. An audacious, almost untamed defiance that sent ripples through the air. The kid didn't just stand there. He breathed challenge. His posture was unpolished but powerful, like a coiled storm ready to strike. The crowd around them held their breath, watching as the usual street hierarchy shifted in an instant. Without warning, the kid stepped forward, just a few feet from the black belts. The world seemed to tilt. Gasps rippled through the gathering. The boy's glance was sharp and piercing, locking onto each twin with a fierce confidence that didn't belong to someone his age. Marcus felt something inside him tighten. The knot of tension squeezed deep in his chest, an ache that hadn't left him since he first started climbing his own tough path. Usually Marcus saw strength as control, as power restrained. But here, something else was shaking the pavement. Pure respect-demanding energy from an unexpected place. The martial artists shifted uneasily, exchanging quick glances. Their smirks faded, replaced by a flicker of doubt. People murmured, their voices low but thick with shock. "Did you see that kid? No fear. How's that even possible? Those black belts don't look so sure now." Marcus's hands trembled slightly inside his coat pockets. His mind raced. What was this kid? What power tied that raw aggression to the calm mastery of the twins? And why did it unsettle even him, a man used to control and respect, owned with money and influence? The street fell almost silent. The sounds, the distant wail of sirens, the hushed voices, a paper bag rustling in the wind, marked the weight of the moment. And then, just as Marcus opened his mouth to move closer, the kid said something. Not loud, but fierce enough to crack the stillness. A single word that echoed off the aged walls and into Marcus's soul. A challenge, not only to the twins, but to him, to everything he thought he knew about power, control, and respect. Was this boy a threat, or was he something else? A spark that could ignite change in a world all too hungry for power without heart. Marcus's breath caught. The next move would decide more than just this moment. It might change their lives forever. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And while you're there, drop a powerful like. It really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence stretched unbearably, a thick veil wrapping around the onlookers as they held their breath, eyes darting between the boy and the poised martial artists. And then, the kid, Dad. The word shattered the tension, and for a heartbeat, the street felt like it had buckled beneath the weight of unexpected gravity. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Two black belts, trained warriors who faced countless opponents with unwavering ease, stood frozen. Where once there was bravado, there was now disbelief etched across their faces. The mask of confidence crumbling like dry leaves underfoot. Marcus stepped back instinctively, eyes wide, mind racing. The kid's cheeks flushed, revealing a tempest of emotions swirling behind his defiant gaze. There was pain, mingled with something deeper, loss, betrayal, and the raw ferocity of connection. Dad? The word echoed and reverberated through Marcus's thoughts, demanding an answer. What did that mean? The twin fighters exchanged glances. One lost his composure, tapping the other, panic flashing before they quickly masked it, forging ahead with practiced calm. The one on the left spoke first, voice low but trembling. You can't be serious. Don't act like you don't know me, Leo, the kid barked, stepping closer, fists clenched tightly. The atmosphere shifted yet again. A current of electricity charged the air, igniting the onlookers' whispered speculation. You left us. You left me and Mom. You ran away. Gasps swept through the crowd like a gust of wind. Marcus's heart raced. The kid was confronting one of the black belts, an assertion of truth that felt both stunning and devastating. Who were these men really? What secrets lay submerged beneath their polished exteriors? Leo's eyes widened, flickers of guilt flashing there, but he quickly masked it with wrath. You don't know what you're talking about, boy. I know more than you think, the kid replied, voice steady but simmering with barely contained rage. Tears gleamed in his ferocious eyes, amplifying the weight of his challenge. Marcus's mind reeled. He had come to sponsor this gala, to elevate his own status. Yet here he was, on the precipice of a revelation. A sinking sense of dread clawed at him as the boy's ferocity revitalized old wounds. What tangled web had he stumbled into? There were layers of pain, hidden truths that rendered the entire scene surreal. The martial artists weren't merely warriors. Perhaps they were estranged fathers grappling with a fractured past. And here stood the sun, igniting the very world they sought to escape. But before anyone could grasp the enormity of the moment, a piercing siren howled in the distance, cutting through the tension. Lights flashed like strobe, creating a surreal dance on the aged brick. With a sudden rush, a group of police officers flooded into the street, their presence marking the rise of chaos, the energy shifting from confrontation to pandemonium. "Step back," one officer shouted, confusion morphing into alarm. The crowd recoiled, the magnifying glass of attention turning, leaving Marcus trapped in an unfolding storm, a myriad of revelations colliding. The boy stood defiantly before his estranged father, anger sparking like a match. A choice loomed, and as the sirens blared louder, it felt as though Marcus realized he was caught in the eye of a hurricane. What would be revealed in the forthcoming chaos? Who were they really when reunions ignited wounds, and confrontations bared the heart's raw truths? The air crackled with tension as the police sirens wailed, blaring urgency into the fragile standoff. The gathered crowd, a tapestry of restrained curiosity and burgeoning chaos, shifted like leaves caught in a sudden gust of wind. Time seemed suspended as Marcus felt the weight of destinies hanging by a thread. Then, before anyone could fully process the turmoil, a voice, dark and deep, reverberated through the thrumming street. "Enough!" All heads turned involuntarily toward the newcomer. He emerged from a sleek black car that had rounded the corner with a quickness that cut through the packing intensity of the moment. His suit was even darker than Marcus's, the gleam of expensive fabric casting shadows on his face. But it was his posture that commanded immediate attention. Confident, unyielding, utterly imposing. "David," Leo muttered, recognition leaking into the chaos, his face draining of color. The kid stepped back, bewilderment replacing the fiery defiance. Whispers rippled through the onlookers as David strode forward, eyes locked onto Leo's, a tension sparking between them like lightning. "Why are you here?" Leo asked, half a plea, half a challenge. "I came because you dragged me into this mess." David's gaze traveled to the boy, then back to Leo, a storm swirling in those sharp eyes. "You've been playing house while the real world spins out of control." The crowd pulsed with a mixture of confusion and intrigue, murmurs buzzing around Marcus, who felt the floor drop beneath him, reeling from this unexpected twist. Who was this David? What was the history that tied him to Leo and this boy? "Listen, if you're gonna dig up the past," Leo warned, a tremor betraying the facade of confidence, "let's keep it between us." The crowd gasped collectively, the air thickening with speculation. "No can do," David retorted, voice icy, eyes flashing. "The kid deserves to know the truth." He nodded toward the boy, who now stood frozen, caught between the strut of authority and the piercing reality of what lay ahead. And you owe everyone here an explanation. It's not just your life you're messing with anymore. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was spiraling beyond anything he could understand. The boy's eyes flickered with realization, veins of hurt coursing through his expression. "What truth?" he demanded, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. David stepped closer, lips curling into a grave semblance of a smile. The truth that Leo didn't just leave. He was told to, by me. The words cut through the air like shards of glass, fracturing everything that had preceded this moment. Faces looked between Mark and the unfolding drama, the implication a heavy shroud in the air. You lied," the boy stammered, disbelief clashing with the rising heat of betrayal. "You didn't even care to." Leo swallowed hard, glancing at Marcus in a silent plea for help, for support. "No, it's not what you think," he protested weakly. "A father who ran and a monster who chased him," David finished, his voice a low growl. "The real question is, who is the real monster?" As those last words hung suspended in the air, Marcus felt his heart stutter. "This is my life. You don't get to erase the past." The crowd leaned in, breath held, as the revelations tumbled into the space of uncertainty. Life before now flickered, like the streetlights above, leaving them all at the mercy of fate. But before the chaos could fully erupt, a faint rustle echoed nearby. A shadow, a figure darting in and out of sight, a warning that something far darker was about to descend upon this volatile gathering. The sirens blared, but now there lurked danger beyond law enforcement, a far more sinister force hidden in plain sight, ready to launch an onslaught that would fracture everything. Marcus felt the world closing in, the stakes surging. His future, the lives entwined here, precariously balanced on the edge of an unknown storm. They weren't prepared for what awaited them around the corner, and with one heartbeat, he knew the time for change had come. But the price would be heavy. Would they all make it out alive to face the truths yet uncovered? The tension spiraled like a tightening coil, the gathered crowd held captive by revelations that felt sharper than the sirens wailing around them. Marcus stood frozen, heart thundering, every instinct screaming for clarity as the air thickened with unspoken truths. The boy, whose eyes blazed dangerously, shifted from confrontation to something more profound, an awakening. And then it happened. From the back, a figure slipped out of an unmarked van, sliding through shadows until it emerged into the thin streaks of amber light. A small, wiry woman with a shock of silver hair walked toward them with an urgency that cut through the chaos like a hot knife. Her sharp features were drawn with purpose, each step calculated, eyes glinting with a fierce intelligence. The crowd murmured, a wave of curiosity giving way to unmistakable apprehension. Who was she in this tangled web of emotions? Before anyone could register her presence, before Leo or David could voice a warning, it was as if Adi, who you've always been, and why you left. The words hung like heavy smoke in the air, a curtain drawn aside to unveil a hidden truth. Leo faltered, eyes widening in shock, a ghostly pallor spreading across his face. "You shouldn't be here, Nora!" he shouted, desperation cracking his usually controlled demeanor. But Nora pressed on, undeterred by the heat of confrontation. "You think you can hide from your past? You left for a reason. But what if that reason was a lie?" She stepped forward, the gravity of her presence anchoring the moment. The boy flinched at the intensity of her gaze, the tension shifting again, this time like a crashing wave. "Enough with the theatrics," David barked, crossing his arms, a snarl twisting his mouth. But there was an unease in his stance, a flicker of doubt that rippled through the air like thunder. "Not theatrics, David," Nora shot back. "This is the truth you need to hear." She turned back to the boy, her eyes softening for a moment, cutting through the storm. "Your father didn't just leave because he doesn't care. He left because he thought he was protecting you from a darkness you could never understand." A collective gasp swept through the crowd as tension snapped. What was she implying? A sense of unraveling, of layers peeling back, gripped Marcus, whose mind raced to comprehend the implications. What sinister truth could lay behind Leo's choices? The weight of expectation shifted again, shadows swarming where clarity had once reigned. "I don't want your excuses," the boy yelled, rage overflowing in a sharp burst. "You're all the same. No one cares. Just tell me what I need to know." Nora hesitated, the pulse of the moment vibrating in the spaces between them. "You deserve to know your real heritage. This world is more than you think." Leo didn't run from fear. He ran from what your life could become, a life haunted by what's inherited. "Stop it!" Leo's voice cracked, bordering on desperation as he stepped back. "Don't do this to him!" And then, before anyone could catch their breath, a booming voice interrupted. The ground quaked as a Humvee rolled into view, the sound of that engine unmistakably heavy, emanating a dark energy that vibrated through the street. The police officers, still dazed by the chaos, turned to face the new arrival. Marcus's heart sank. He could feel the air thicken like a storm cloud, charged with impending danger. From the vehicle, a broad-shouldered figure stepped out, glistening in a tailored suit that cast an imposing shadow. "That's enough, Nora," his voice echoed, heavy with authority and menace. Nora went pale as recognition settled like ice in her veins. "Why are you here, Marcus?" she asked, panic threading her voice. "Because you've meddled in matters you don't understand," he replied, eyes locking on Leo with a knowing heat, igniting a flare of alarm. The boy was motionless, confusion pouring into his features as all eyes turned toward Marcus, the implications sinking in, a tide of fear washing over the scene. "What did you do?" he whispered, the fragile line of trust fraying with every heartbeat. "What I had to do," Marcus declared, his voice steady, yet the weight of pressure hung between them like an unsheathed sword. The revelation crushed the air. Everything they thought they knew twisted into a labyrinth of deceit, hidden alliances, and unexpected betrayals. In that moment, with chaos swirling around them and mysteries lurking in the shadows, they stood on unforgiving ground, a network of tensions ready to snap. And as darkness loomed, Marcus felt the tremors of an impending storm. Who would emerge from this chaos unscathed, and who would bear the mark of betrayal forever? The truth lay ahead, cloaked in shadows, with stakes higher than anyone could anticipate. Marcus felt the tremors of an impending storm as the hulking figure stepped from the Humvee. Tension breathing like smoke in the charged air. What I had to do, the words thundered, slicing through the roiling chaos surrounding them. Unease rippled through the crowd, and all eyes turned. The tremor in his voice was a lit fuse, ready to ignite. Marcus felt his heart race, the stakes rising higher than he had imagined. "I did what was necessary to protect you," he replied, but his voice wavered under the weight of unyielding truths locked inside him. The silence stretched, suffocating, until Nora, with her silver hair gleaming like polished stone, stepped forward, eyes blasting with revelations. "No, Marcus," she spat, the intensity of her gaze managing to slice through the myriad of uncertainty that hung heavy. "You concealed more than just the past. You've built an empire upon lies." Her words cracked like lightning, reverberating through the thrumming crowd. Gasps filled the air, murmurs igniting a wildfire of speculation. Leo's face paled, and the boy's confusion deepened into an abyss of despair. "What do you mean?" Panic flashed in his eyes as he searched their faces, desperately pleading for answers. Nora took her chance, every syllable laced with conviction. "It was supposed to be a safe haven, a legacy after what happened to our family. But you turned your back on everything. You let the darkness grow simply to climb higher." She pointed a finger at Marcus, accusingly. "You're not who you pretend to be." The crowd leaned in, breaths held, hearts beating erratically, igniting whispers. Shockwaves rippling through the onlookers as they grasped at the threads of this explosive truth dangling in front of them like a guillotine. "Enough!" Marcus finally roared, but the volume masked the cracks in his voice. Each glare from the crowd felt like stakes piercing into his skin, and he knew he was trapped within a web of old wounds. "You don't understand. I had to cut ties to protect what's left," he argued. But there was a quiver of desperation lurking beneath his bravado. Before anyone could respond, the earth itself seemed to tremble. An agitated rumble swept through the street, a sound so deep it resonated within their bones. And then, as if scripted in the theater of calamity, a flash erupted from behind, an arc of fire cascading into the air, illuminating the fading light of the day. "Surprise!" A voice boomed as a figure cloaked in black stepped from the shadows, holding a detonator. The crowd gasped collectively, confusion morphing into sheer panic. "This party's just beginning!" The reality of what was happening crashed into Marcus with a force that left him breathless. The figure was someone he recognized, someone from his past, twisted and sinister, an inextricable thread in the fabric he desperately tried to weave into something respectable. Greer, he whispered, dread coiling around his throat. The implications hit him harder than any blow. This was not just an unexpected twist. It was a revelation that could obliterate everything. His identity, the very foundation of his existence. "What have you done?" "Only what you taught me," Greer shouted, eyes glinting with manic glee, sending chilling shivers through the crowd. The boy recoiled, no longer narrow-eyed with defiance, but horrified by the disintegration of his reality. And as the countdown began, with a series of ominous beeps echoing through the street, Marcus realized that the past had come crashing back in a way he had never anticipated. Families ripped apart by lies, connections exposed, futures hanging by a thread. Everything he had built was about to explode into chaos. The stakes had risen far beyond personal vendettas. A showdown loomed larger than anything he could control. He steeled himself, heart hammering, as he faced the crumbling remnants of his carefully constructed world. The truth was unraveling, and another name had surfaced, a ghost from the shadows. Could he protect what remained before it was rendered to ashes? The questions raced through him, leaving one final poignant inquiry lingering like shadows over the smoldering wreckage. Marcus felt his heart pound against his ribcage like a wild animal trying to escape as panic rippled through the crowd, their expressions flickering between confusion and terror. A sense of foreboding hung thick, suffocating, as everyone took stock of the situation, eyes darting between Greer, Marcus, and the boy, now frozen in disbelief. "Everyone get back!" an officer shouted, pulling his weapon, but his voice fell flat against the tide of murmur and dread swelling among the throng. The pulse of fear quickened, melding into a collective gasp when Greer's maniacal grin widened, hands tightening around the detonator like it was a toy. "Watch the show," he jeered, eyes sparkling with a twisted thrill. That's when the unexpected happened. A figure burst from the back of the crowd, weaving through the startled bystanders. In seconds, the silhouette materialized. A teenage girl with tangled hair and fiery eyes. Panic morphing into determination. "No," she cried. "Stop. You can't do this." The rush of warmth from her voice sliced through the impending doom, drawing everyone's focus. Greer turned, momentarily disarmed by her presence. "What do you know about anything?" he scoffed, but his voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in like a thief. The girl pushed through the crowd, anger fueling her steps. "I know your secrets, Greer," she spat, every syllable dripping with disdain. "And this isn't your revenge. This is a betrayal." A shudder rippled through Marcus, eyes widening. Who was she? Then she raised her chin defiantly, the glow of the streetlights revealing a stark resemblance to Leo, locking those steady eyes onto him. The crowd buzzed with realization. "Is she your sister?" Leo staggered back against the wall, words tumbling out of his mouth like a landslide. "It can't be. I thought you were gone. His voice cracked, tightening around those hidden pasts. No thanks to you. Her voice rang sharp, every ounce of hurt laid bare. You didn't care enough to look for us? Greer laughed, but the sound fell flat. Panic crept into his features as the unveiling of family ties shifted the atmosphere. You're just a pawn, Solara, just like him. Marcus's head spun. Solara? Leo's sister? This shocking twist revealed a layer he had never anticipated. Conflicts buried deep beneath the surface rushed forth like a flood. The sirens wailed louder now, the chorus of chaos growing more discordant. But the crowd remained riveted, breath caught in their throats. Solara stepped closer to Greer, tension smoldering between them. You think you're the mastermind? She fired back, her voice unwavering. You're just as weak as he is. Without warning, she lunged forward, attempting to grab the detonator. In a reflexive move, Greer sidestepped, jerking the device away. The crowd shrank back, a collective gasp rising like smoke. Fear twisting their faces. Get and stay back, Greer warned, brandishing the detonator like a weapon. The air felt electric, charging with urgency as all eyes flitted from Solara to Marcus. The weight of her family connection, severing any pretense he'd harbored about them being mere strangers. And at that moment, the world around them twisted and lurched as if reality had splintered. Solara's eyes burned with fury, a reflection of the tempest around them, emotions crashing against the shore of forgotten loyalties. You will regret this, Greer. We will expose everything you've done. Suddenly, a deafening bang echoed from the vicinity, a thunderclap that tore through the fracture in the moment. Smoke began to billow, spiraling around them, obscuring vision, chaos spilling into an unmarked territory where trust lay shattering on the ground. In the haze, Marcus felt the grip of destiny tighten. What secrets would be unveiled in the ensuing storm? The air pulsed with the intensity of revelation and peril, and as the smoke swirled around him, one question loomed larger than all else. Who among them would betray, and who would finally emerge from the shadows unbroken? The air thickened with smoke, swirling around them, the acrid scent slicing through the tension like a knife. Marcus stood rooted, heart racing, as Solara faced Greer. The world had spiraled into chaos, yet an undercurrent of dread crawled under his skin. He couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to be unleashed, another layer waiting to fracture. Stop! Solara yelled again, desperation lacing her voice. Their eyes locked in an electric standoff. Greer's grip tightened on the detonator, fingers twitching. But before the clock ticked any closer to destruction, a loud crash tore through the crowd. Glass shattered. A shop window exploded into shards. Panicked screams erupted. People ducked and sprinted back, fear gripping them like a vice. The air was rife with confusion, but Marcus didn't have time to process before an even more shocking twist hit. Amid the chaos, a second figure emerged from the shadows, stepping through the smoke, tall and imposing. Long dark hair framed a face obscured by a mask. You shouldn't have underestimated me, Greer, it said. Voice low and smooth, yet feral. Less than a heartbeat hung suspended before realization struck Marcus like a thunderbolt. No, he whispered, horrified. The woman peeled back the mask. It was Mira. Mira, the one he had thought lost in the webs of his past, a long-lost partner, thought dead and buried with old conflicts. The world around him blurred, disbelief crashing over him like a tidal wave, drowning out the cacophony of panic. Mira? The name escaped his lips, frantic disbelief spilling forth. Everyone turned, the boy and Solara frozen, eyes wide. Greer flicked a glance her way, eyes wild with betrayal and anger. You were supposed to be gone, he spat, voice trembling. And yet, here I am, Mira said, stepping closer to Greer, her expression unreadable. You thought you could rewrite history, but I've been watching, waiting for the moment to expose you. This revelation struck deeper than the threat in the air. It was personal, a melodrama skirting the shadows of their past. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd, tension slicing through with razor precision. What is going on? The boy screamed, voice squeaking with confusion. Eyes shifting between the three of them. Who are you? More than you could ever know, Mira replied, a smirk cutting across her lips. The bravado hid clarity and strength, reminding Marcus of a flame flickering just before darkness could swallow it whole. Leo isn't the only one with a secret. Every heartbeat stilled as the implications of her words echoed in the minds of everyone gathered. What do you mean? Leo stepped forward, confusion and anger clashing in his voice. The past you thought was buried isn't just mine, Leo, she said, sounding more like a prophet than a woman scorned. The nightmares you think you escaped, the ones you stitched together with lies, are alive and well, waiting for you. Just as Marcus opened his mouth to ask what she meant, the loudest boom crackled through the air, a wave of force that sent him staggering back. An explosion fizzled, bright and blinding, right next to Greer. Windows shattered, and people screamed. Greer stumbled, wide-eyed as the detonator slipped from his fingers, falling to the ground. No, he yelled, but it was too late. As the crowd erupted into chaos, a crushing wave of guilt colliding with dread swept through Marcus. He was trapped in a storm of truth and consequence, and there, in the wreckage, lay the gravest secret. Mira wasn't just a survivor. She was an orchestrator, woven deeply into the fabric of his life. A bridge to shadows that he'd assumed forgotten. Let it burn, Greer shouted, scrambling back as flames licked toward them. Din swirling around with growing desperation. The atmosphere thickened with dread and urgency, Marcus's heart hammering in his chest. Amid the chaos, one echoing thought clawed at him, a dark truth that bound them all. Had they all been played? And just when it seemed the flames would consume them, a piercing scream cut through the wild frenzy. A cry of reckoning that left everyone breathless. What have you done? The boy stood at the center of it all, shouting with rising horror, eyes locked on Mira. This is your doing, isn't it? The flames danced higher, illuminating the shadows. Beneath the chaos, revelations brewed darker than the smoke above. As the world crumbled around them, Marcus knew a new reckoning had begun. No longer was it just about survival. It was about truth. It was coming for them all. The crowd gasped collectively, a raw wave of horror flooding the street as the boy's words hung heavy in the air. Mira's gaze darkened, the weight of his accusation bearing down upon her. Her mouth opened, ready to protest, but the chaos of the explosion drowned out her protest, sending shards of glass spiraling like deadly confetti. It was pure pandemonium, and in that monstrous moment, truths were pressed into the corners of their hearts like daggers. Suddenly, the ground trembled, shaking their fragile resolve. A resounding crack echoed from above, a sound like thunder portending disaster, surprising everyone into a moment of petrified silence. People shrank back instinctively, the world blurring into a slow-motion spectacle as something heavy descended upon them. Then, without warning, a massive section of the building across the street imploded, sending a cyclone of bricks and debris into the air. It exploded outward, transforming the street into a maelstrom of chaos. Smoke writhed, tendrils of darkness curling around them like fingers looking to snatch hopes from the living. "Run!" Someone screamed, but it was too late, for the moment hung suspended like an expectant breath. Amidst the flying dust and rubble, a figure stumbled from the collapsing structure, half buried in debris. The crowd stilled again as they witnessed the unmistakable silhouette, a woman, coughing and clawing her way into the light. It was Clara, a woman thought long gone, someone whose absence had haunted the remnants of their stories. A sister, a mother, an ally salvaged from the depths of memory. "Clara?" Leo's voice cracked, disbelief etched across his features. "But how?" "Leo," she choked, a raw scream that cracked the tension like thunder. "You need to know the truth." She dragged herself from the dark remnants, gasping, hair matted and stained. "Everything has been a lie, a twisted fabrication." Greer's expression shifted, the cacophony of panic drowned in the flash of a dawning realization. "You were supposed to be dead." His tone morphed from incredulity to fear, as if the ground beneath him had suddenly given way. "No, Greer." Clara dragged shaky breaths, adrenaline clamping around her lungs, strength surging through her. "You think you're the only one with secrets? You don't understand who we really are." She locked her eyes on the boy, bursting with confusion, her voice wavering yet filled with determination. You're part of something bigger than you know, something we were all meant to protect." Gasps echoed through the crowd, disbelief spreading like a contagion. Marcus felt the ground drop from beneath him, a tide of dread so potent it threatened to pull him under. The darkness enveloping them, chaos roaring in the background, faded under the weight of a revelation so powerful it shattered their fragile reality. "He's your brother," Clara blurted, pointing directly at Leo, eyes ablaze with truth. "Your real family was threatened, so we staged deaths, planted lies to protect each other." The ground shook again, but this time it was a tremor of realization. The ties binding them no longer twisted around betrayal. They coiled tight around an unbroken bond, yet hidden from the world. A family formed in shadows, masked by pain. The astonishment in Leo's eyes transformed into anger, swirling with confusion, and the boy stood at the precipice of his own revelations. Frozen in place. "Brother," was all Leo could croak, stunned disbelief painting his features white. But the storm of emotions surged, anger, fear, and the igniting hope of connection, all battling for dominance. As the clamor around them surged crescendo, a siren shrieked nearby, merging with the chaos. It was not over yet. The danger was still thrumming in the air, thickened with the truth yet to come. The past surged forward as the wounded present threatened to consume them. And as Clara stepped into the light, a fierce protector among them, Marcus knew that everything fraught with danger was just the beginning. "Who else has been lying?" the boy demanded, eyes darting across the faces before him, shaking with confusion. A spark igniting the tent. The question ripped through the heart of the gathering, leaving echoes of dread painted in the faces around him. Then, as if the universe decided to crack open its own secrets, a catastrophe unfolded. A deafening roar crescendoed from above. The sky erupted with ferocity as a flock of black-suited figures descended from the rooftops, suspended by sleek cables like predators ready to pounce. The crowd erupted into chaos, screams cascading like a thunderous wave. Confusion spiraling into panic as the sudden assault unfolded before their eyes. "Get down!" Marcus shouted as he instinctively pulled the boy close, catching sight of the masked figures descending with purpose, weapons glinting ominously in the waning light. The platform of chaos shifted once more, giving rise to fresh terrors. Greer, momentarily distracted, dropped the detonator, allowing Clara to scramble toward the fallen device, fingers shaking as she reached for it. "Stop!" Mira shouted, eyes wide, meaning every syllable in that moment of revelation, as if she had always known something hidden beneath the surface. "You don't understand what they want." But as panic spread, a resounding crash echoed through the street. One of the masked figures landed beside Greer, sending him sprawling backward with a forceful shove. The air vibrated with tension as the crowd recoiled, bracing for the anticipatory violence that hovered like a thick fog. "You thought you could hide, didn't you?" the newcomer hissed, menace lacing their tone. Marcus gripped the boy's shoulder tight, staring wide-eyed as the masked figure loomed closer. "What is happening?" His voice quaked, pulse racing, throat dry with dread. In that heart-stopping instant, everything shifted again. Clara, previously nearly lost in the chaos, gasped, spotting something creeping toward the masked figures, a glimmering object clutching the light. With a jolt of recognition, she blurted out words that stung with raw impact. "That's not just anyone. It's my brother, Victor." The boy's head whipped toward Clara, voice trembling. "What? Your brother?" A brief silence shattered as realization cascaded through the tension. Within the darkness of the masks, A glimmer of familiarity sparked. Fury ignited in Clara's eyes, and she screamed, "You abandoned us! You left me for dead! Why now? Why this?" Marcus's heart sank deeper, spiraling into an abyss of confusion. The masked figure stepped closer, removing the mask to reveal not just Victor, but the twisted expression of betrayal and anguish on his face. "I came for justice," he roared, voice cracking under the weight of a past they had tried to bury. "You all thought I was gone, but I was fighting to expose the truth you hid." Gasps erupted. A thunderous whisper rolled through the crowd. What old wounds had been severed? What had finally given rise to this catastrophic reunion? Victor turned to the boy, pain radiating from his presence, words heavy on his tongue. "You are more than you know, more connected to this darkness than you can comprehend." The weight pressed against them all, lurking in shadows once hidden, rippling anew with terror. As revelations crashed down like thunder, Marcus realized not only had they been diminished by the past, but also that Victor carried the weight of a larger secret. Their blood may run deeper than anyone dared to define. And just as it seemed things could not spiral further, an unwelcome rumble echoed through the street. The ground shook violently, and an electric tension seized the air. Marcus's heart raced as a flicker of doubt wormed its way into his thoughts. Was Victor the ally they hoped he could be? Or had the darkness he promised to unmask only begun to unfold? In that moment, amidst chaos and revelation, he knew this narrative would never return to its expected course. Instead, it had ignited into a firestorm of conflict where buried secrets would surface and betrayal sliced deeper into the already fragile alliances. Would their entangled fates lead them to destruction before the truth could finally be unearthed? As chaos swirled around them like a tempest, Marcus felt the weight of everything crashing down. The ground trembled again, and the moment before a storm made clear what would come next. He turned to Clara, Victor, Leo, and the boy, their faces pale but filled with raw emotion. They were tangled in darkness, yet one flicker of light stood between them. Hope. "Everyone, listen." Marcus shouted over the chaos, but his voice was almost lost. "We don't have to fight. If we come together, we can stand against this." The crowd, still frozen, began to murmur. Questions danced in their eyes, faces unsure but desperate for answers. Solara, her eyes wild with determination, stepped forward. "We won't let Greer or anyone take away our chance to be a family." Clara nodded firmly. "This is our chance to reclaim what was stolen from us. We can't let fear control us anymore." In the flurry of chaos, realization swept through the crowd. A force bigger than their fear started to rise. Marcus felt the energy shift, hearts coming together like puzzle pieces. But they had to act fast. The masked figures were regrouping, preparing for the storm brewing around them. Victor, face grim and tight, pointed at Greer. "You don't get to decide our fate. It's time to end the cycle." Then, in an electrifying moment, Leo turned to the boy. What do you think? Want to fight for your family? We're all in this together. You're not alone. The boy met Leo's gaze, excitement battling with confusion. Yes, let's do it. For family. His voice rang out, igniting something within everyone. In that moment, it was as if the very air cracked with newfound energy. Together, they formed a line, standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to face down the masked figures. Solara raised her fists high, and with courage surging like a wildfire, they charged forward. The scene erupted into controlled chaos. Marcus led the charge, Clara at his side, sprinting toward Greer, the face of their shared darkness. The momentum surged as the crowd followed, support growing like a wave crashing forward. It was now or never. Greer screamed in frustration, realizing he had lost control. "You fools!" he fumbled in panic, glancing back as they approached. But he was only a puppet of a greater darkness, and he soon felt the weight of their unity. As the group closed in, Greer stumbled backward, overwhelmed by the tide of hope that swept through. The ground shook, the remnants of the building still cracking under pressure, but they stood strong, a united front against the chaos that had marred their lives for far too long. In one final surge, Marcus felt the power in their unity break through the barriers of fear. Together, we stop this, right here, right now. With that, they surged forward, a whirl of energy, supported by a shared heartbeat. Just like that, the masked figures faltered. One by one, they vanished into the shadows, defeated by a force stronger than fear, hope. As the dust began to settle, the crowd drew in breath. Victory tangible in the air. They were alive, standing together, the past gripping them just tightly enough to remind them of their journey. Clara stepped forward, eyes glistening. "We have a long road to walk, but for the first time, we're free." The boy smiled, his shoulders relaxing as he took a deep breath. "And we'll walk it together. That's what family does." As they formed a circle, the tension lifted, replaced with laughter and relief. They knew they would face challenges ahead, but they had each other. Finally, they could look toward the future. Yet, Marcus caught sight of a flicker along the street, a shadow moving just beyond the light, something lingering at the edge of their vision. A hint of warning, a reminder that storms never fully pass. The future was their own, but a whisper of the past loomed, waiting silently for a moment to return. You must subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Share this video right now with at least 5 friends who need to know how this ends. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait another second.